When you get into your cruise ship cabin for the first time, there's a number of things that you really have to do. If you don't, you might find yourself regretting it later in the cruise and really wishing that you had. Some of these things might really surprise you, but in this video today, I am going to be sharing 15 things that I think you have to do every single time you arrive at a cruise ship cabin for the first time. I'm Fraser and I use my YouTube channel to share all of my experiences out on cruise ships with you. So hopefully there'll be something that you'll find useful in this video, whether you've never taken a cruise before or maybe even if you've taken 200 cruises before. Let's get started with number one, and we're talking beds. When you book a hotel on land, you'll typically find that you'll book a hotel room based on the bed configuration that you're going to find inside. For example, a king room will then have a king-size bed, a double room will have a double bed, so on and so forth. Cruise ships are not totally dissimilar to that. What you'll find is that you'll be asked at the point of making your booking whether you would like to book a double configuration or a twin configuration. Most cruise ship cabins have 2 single beds in the room, and if you choose to book a twin configuration, those beds will be separated by the time you get on board, or if you book a double, those 2 single beds will be slid together and made up as one bed. You can find sometimes that when you arrive in your cabin, the bed configuration isn't quite right, or maybe it's set up the total opposite of what you requested when you booked. Don't worry, all you have to do is contact guest services or speak to your cabin attendant. It's super easy to fix. If they know your preference, then going forward, you're not going to have an issue. So number one, always check your bed configuration as soon as you arrive in your cabin. Number 2, on the topic of cabin attendants, make sure that you make it your mission to meet your cabin attendant as early in the cruise as possible. I always recommend this for a number of different reasons. First, they're the person that's going to be coming into your room every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, and it's always great, in my opinion, to almost befriend that person and let them know some of your preferences. Now, that could be that you would like to have a carafe of water delivered to the cabin. That might be that you'd like an ice bucket to be refilled every now and again during the cruise, or maybe you'd like some additional fresh towels. One thing that I always ask a cabin attendant for, and I get a very mixed response, is a kettle to be delivered to my cabin. It's always amazed me how many cruise lines out there are able to supply kettles so that I can boil water and have a coffee in the morning in the room, despite the fact it's not something that they advertise. One example I had was I took a cruise with MSC Cruises over in the Middle East from Dubai. I requested a kettle and it turned up at my cabin about 20 minutes later. So you never know, you will never get it if you don't ask. So yes, number 2, always make it your mission to meet your cabin attendant as early as you can during the cruise. Third, check everything in the cabin is in good working order. I do this every single time I arrive at a cabin for the first time so that I don't then repeatedly find issues all the way through the cruise, because I would find that so much more annoying than just generating a quick tick list on day 1 and letting my cabin attendant know what has to be done. For example, you might find that when you arrive in your cabin, there's 1 or 2 light bulbs that need to be looked at. You might find that the remote control doesn't have any batteries. You might find the balcony door has got a squeak in it. Check the fridge is working. Is it cold enough? If not, let them know. They can usually replace it and bring another one along for you. Other things to think about, look at the curtains. Are they going to keep the light out? Does the TV tune okay? Does it have the right channels on there? Basically, just check everything is working so that you don't come back to your room on day 3, day 4 of the cruise and find something that you wish you had checked earlier. Another one that I always say is make sure that the mattress on your bed and your pillows suit your preferences, because usually if the bed is too firm, then they can bring additional toppers and things to soften that mattress for you. And most cruise lines now will have pillow menus that if the pillows are too soft or too firm, they can bring the alternative so that you can make sure that you get a good night's sleep. But when you ask for that at 1 o'clock in the morning at the end of the night, it's going to be way more difficult than just making the request as soon as you get on board. Number 4, the safe. Every time I arrive in a cabin for the first time, I find the safe, I make sure it works, and I pop my passport, my travel documents, and my money into that safe so that I can crack on and enjoy my holiday or my vacation. There's nothing more annoying than failing to do that and then realising later in the cruise that the previous passenger has actually left that safe locked. It's super easy to do. You'll usually find that safe either in a wardrobe or in a drawer. So find the safe, lock away your valuables, and crack on. Number 5, unpack. This one is probably one of my most important ones. I hate looking at a suitcase while I'm away. That means that as soon as I arrive in that cabin, one of the first things I do is open the suitcase, get all my clothes and all of my belongings into whatever part of the cabin they belong, and then I get rid of the bag and I get rid of the suitcase. If you've never cruised before, then make sure you check underneath your bed, because the majority of cruise ships have underbed storage that's perfect for getting rid of your suitcase. I've met so many people who have cruised for the first time and they get to the end of the week and they're annoyed because their suitcase is still in the room or their suitcase is taking up loads of space in the wardrobe. And they simply don't realise that you can usually store it underneath the bed. So top tip, always try it and put your suitcase under the bed. If it doesn't fit under there, and if you are struggling for storage, you might often find that cabin attendants do have the ability to take an empty suitcase away for you, store it elsewhere, and return it on the final day of the cruise. So don't worry if you are losing lots of wardrobe space because you've got a suitcase there that won't go under the bed. Ask the question and they might be able to help you out. Number 6, the minibar. Is it included? If yes, great. If not, I always recommend emptying the minibar in order for you to store your own drinks in there. I do this on almost every single cruise because I will never wake up and open something from the minibar. I just would never do it in a hotel or on a cruise ship. I would much rather have that minibar emptied, and then I can put things like my own bottle of water, my own cans of Fanta, my own bars of chocolate in there that I either take on board or I buy from the onboard shops and bars to keep ready to be drank or eaten at any point during the cruise. If, however, you do like to eat and drink from the minibar at the onboard prices, then you might want to glance over this one for now. But personally, for me, I always make sure that minibar is emptied so that I can use it for myself. Number 7, find and set up all of your cruise ship cabin accessories as soon as you get into your room on day number 1. Now, what do I mean by a cruise ship cabin accessory? Well, if you've seen my other videos or if you've been over to my Amazon shop, you'll know that it's super useful on a cruise to take things like a universal travel adapter to make sure that you can always get power from any of the outlets in the room. It's also really useful to have magnetic hooks or magnets that you can put on the wall to help you store paperwork and store things like hats, lanyards, and so on and so forth. And a lot of people really benefit from travelling with over-door storage compartments that they can put things like toiletries in over the back of the toilet door. I always find anything that I take on that topic and get it set up on day 1 so that I can then get rid of the case and forget about it. If you'd like to find out more about these things, just head down to the description of this video and you'll find a link there to my Amazon shop where you can find a whole host of recommended items that you really should be thinking about taking on your next cruise. Number 8. The next thing that you need to think about doing as soon as you arrive at your cruise ship cabin is figure out how you send messages to your cabin attendant while on board. Some cruise ships function exactly the same as hotels on land, where they have an over-the-door handle hanger that will say simply "Do not disturb" or "ready for the room to be made up." That then signals to your cabin attendant that they can come in and turn the room around ready for the day if it's the morning, or they can come in and complete the turn-down service if that's offered by your cruise line. However, more modern ships have replaced these over-the-handle hangers with things like lights that display on the outside of the room, whether it's "Do not disturb" or "please make up room," and you'll find switches for them inside the cabin. So make sure you find them and figure out how they work so that you don't leave your room on Do Not Disturb all day and you arrive back to an unmade cabin at the end of your first couple of days. Some cruise ships also now have magnets where you just simply take it off the back of the cabin door, put it on the front, and it will say something like, "I've gone exploring, please make up the room," or "I'm resting, please do not disturb." So whether it be a handle hanger, a magnet, a light, or any other way, make sure you figure out how it works and don't get caught out. Number 9, I always take a picture and a video of my cabin as soon as I arrive. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, obviously you do that because you've got this YouTube channel, but the reality is I do this in almost every single hotel room that I visit anywhere in the world, despite the fact it's not going to feature on my YouTube channel. I love to look back and remember what my rooms were like when I travelled, and I also love to send pictures of the room to friends and family to show them what my trip is like. Now, I can tell you that as soon as you then unpack, that cabin is never going to be as clean and tidy as it was at the point that you arrived. So before you unpack, grab your phone, grab your camera, take a couple of quick pictures, maybe take that video you want to take to remember your cabin, and then it's done. You don't have to worry about it for the rest of the cruise. Number 10, you must think about your muster video. If you've never taken a cruise before, the concept of this might be totally unfamiliar to you, but before the pandemic, most cruise lines required passengers to all meet in one communal area to have a safety briefing conducted. For example, the main theatre. Nowadays, the way that a lot of cruise lines work is they ask passengers to watch a video back in their cabin. That then eradicates the need to get everyone together in one place, and it means that people can crack on with enjoying their holiday, getting out to the bars, enjoying the restaurants, even before the ship has left the port. I always make sure that I flick the television on, make sure if there's a muster video to be watched, I watch it, and then I complete whatever action you have to do at the end of the video to signal to the ship that you've watched it. Sometimes the simple action of watching the video is enough, but on some ships and some cruise lines, you then will receive a password with a phone number at the end of the video that you have to phone that number and give the password so that they can rest assured that you've watched the whole of the video. So yes, make sure when you get to your cabin, you check out your muster video if that's required of you on your cruise line. Number 11, temperature. As soon as you arrive at your cruise ship cabin, you have to think about the temperature of the room and you have to have a look at your air conditioning panel. I meet so many people who complain 4, 5, 6 days into the cruise that their room is simply too warm, and it's been the case for the entirety of the cruise. What that then means is that on the final few days of their vacation, they're packing up their whole cabin and they're trying to now move to another room, while the problem is fixed either during the current cruise or before the next set of passengers board the ship. Had those passengers found that fault on day 1 and highlighted it to guest services, there's a much stronger chance that that could have been rectified before the end of the week. I often find that if I go into a cabin and it's too cold or it's too hot, if I alert my cabin attendant or guest services to that, it's usually fixed even by the end of the first evening. I've even had it in the past where by the end of the first night, I've been invited to move cabin to one that's got a better regulated thermostat. Now, one thing that you have to remember if you are looking at this as soon as you arrive in your cabin, if you are lucky enough to be cruising in a balcony cabin, then always remember that the air conditioning will usually cut out as soon as you open the balcony door. It can sometimes then take a few minutes to kick back in, so make sure that if you are preparing to complain that your room is too warm, make sure that your balcony door is closed and locked, so it's fully sealed, before you go down and say the air conditioning isn't working, because if you get that wrong, it'll be pretty embarrassing. Tip number 12. Think about power outlets. This one might sound really simple, but familiarise yourself with where all of the power outlets are in your cabin. You might think, okay, well, I'm not going to miss a power outlet because at the end of the day, they'll be on a wall, ready to accept a plug going straight in. And you might already know what they look like if they're European, American, or British. that's fine, but what about the USB points? Some cruise ship cabins will have USB points that are far more hidden than the main power outlets. For example, I took a cruise on board MSC Cruises Virtuosa, and I got until the very final night of the cruise before I discovered that the lamp beside the bed actually did have a USB socket underneath. Now, that didn't frustrate me too much because I had so many other power outlets in the cabin, but if I'd been travelling with a family and we had all been trying to share 2 or 3 plug points, I'd have been really annoyed to discover those extra USB points at the end of the week. So make sure when you get on the cruise, look for, yes, okay, the power points that are in the cabin, and make sure that you've got the travel adapter to fit those points, but also look for hidden ones. My top tip is to have a look round and have a feel around the lamps on either side of the bed, because sometimes you might find a power outlet down the side of the lamp or on top of the lamp, and it might not be totally obvious when you first look at it. Tip number 13. If I'm staying in an inside or an interior cabin, in other words, a room without a window, I always make sure as soon as I arrive that I've got a good view. Now, that might make no sense to you because I've just said there's no window in the room, and I've also just said that I make sure I've got a good view. Now, if you've never taken a cruise before, then you might be surprised to learn that actually from a cruise ship cabin with no window, you can still see the outside. You do that by tuning into one of the ship's webcams, which are usually mounted onto the front or the back or one of the sides of the ship. That means that from your cabin, you can always see outside, whether it's morning, whether it's afternoon, or whether it's night. I always make sure that as soon as I arrive in the cabin, I know what channel to tune into to get access to the webcam. And I also make sure it's nice and clear, because there's nothing more annoying, in my opinion, than waking up and having no idea where you are because your television isn't connecting to the webcam. It's usually super easy to find which channel this is on. Just turn your TV on and have a scroll through the channels, and you might be surprised at how good a view you can get while saving all that money booking a room with no window. Tip number 14, as soon as I arrive in my cruise ship cabin and after I've unpacked, I remove any additional hangers from the wardrobes. The reason for this is that when the ship begins to move later on embarkation day, you'll find that everything in the room will move around slightly, which is totally natural because at the end of the day, you're on a ship. Now, depending on what way your wardrobe is then facing in the room, the hangers will just rock slightly back and slightly forward. That could then mean that during the night, you'll hear your coat hangers hitting off the door or the back wall of the wardrobe, or you might just hear the hangers creaking a little as they move. I find that so annoying, so I always unpack my suitcases into the wardrobe and then just take any additional hangers and put them either under the bed or on the base of the wardrobe. Another thing that you can do to get rid of that noise is just simply take a spare towel or some spare clothes and just put that towel or put those clothes through the hangers to give them enough weight so that they don't rock back and forth as easily with the motion of the ship. Finally, tip number 15. The final thing that I always make sure I do as soon as I arrive in a cruise ship cabin, and I think you should too, is just take a second to breathe and take a second to relax, because usually getting on a ship and reaching the cabin means that my often long journey to the port and journey to the ship is over. Rather than leaving the cabin straight away and going out to explore the ship, I really enjoy just taking a second to relax, remember where I am, and figure out my plan for the day. I'll always then get my daily schedule, sit down with a coffee or a glass of water, and figure out what's next, and also have a look at what the evening holds in store for me before then heading out to watch our very first sail away of the cruise. And that's it. That's the 15 things that I do every single time I arrive in a cruise ship cabin for the first time. Hopefully, you've found something in this video that you'll find useful and you might take on one of your future cruises. If you have cruised before, I'd love to know in the comments, do you agree with me or have I missed something out? At the end of the day, I am one person. I sometimes cruise solo, I sometimes cruise with other people. I tend to not cruise with a big family, so maybe if you represent a family, there's other things that you also like to do. Let us know in the comments, because I am sure people here would love to know. I really hope you've enjoyed this video today. If you have, it would be great if you would support my channel by clicking both the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons. And why not come and join me over in this video? Here, I'll be walking you through the reasons why I love to cruise in an inside or an interior cabin on a cruise ship. It might surprise you, and it might just make you fall in love with a whole new type of cabin. I'll see you over there.